And I see we have someone else that's joined us, so that's wonderful. And it's 6 o'clock right now. So we'll just give everybody a minute or two. I know 6 o'clock is a bad time because of dinner, and I know we have people all over the United States, so they're in different time zones and different responsibilities at different times. So hopefully people can join us and we can answer questions. And Chad and I are going to give you kind of a brief overview of the DNP program here at Ohio University as we're having people join us. And I'm sure people will join us when they are able and when they can get online. So hopefully everybody, well, obviously the people who are here did get the Zoom link and were able to access our program tonight. I am going to record it tonight so that we will have it available on our website for people who might have questions that aren't answered on the website. So with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Margie Vaught. I am the associate director in one of the associate directors in the School of Nursing and the DNP program coordinator. I have been a nurse educator for a number of years and have been involved in several DNP programs and have been at Ohio University for the past 5 years. So we are delighted to welcome you tonight and are looking forward to talking about our DNP program. Ours is a fairly new program. It's been around about 4 years. We're looking at admitting our next cohort. And Chad, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, a very important person on our team.
Of course, I just took a drink of water right before you said, introduce yourself. So thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Chad Kopenski. I'm academic advisor for the graduate nursing programs for most of the students. I am I'm sort of their point of contact with, for lack of a better word, the more bureaucratic parts of Ohio University. Programs of study, registration, who to contact when there are different types of concerns. I also think it's important to note for students that I am not a nurse. There's far too many nurses and occupational therapists and medical professionals in my family. I speak kind of basic conversational nurse, but my background is in educational policy. And so a lot of what I do for students is translate educational policy and bureaucracy into nurse. And so a lot of what I do for programs, and I think Dr. Vaught would agree with you, is I do a lot of translation from what OU does to what you all do. And if I can help, I'm glad to do so. So I'm glad you're all here.
Okay, well, thank you, Chad. Chad is, as he said, one of the very important point people that you will be get to know very, very well. And he is always available during normal business hours to answer questions that you might have about our program. So as I mentioned, the DNP program at Ohio University is a fairly new program. Our students have been quite successful going through the program and have been very, very positive in their feedback. Our program is set up with two different programs, basically. We have the BSN to DNP program and the MSN to DNP program. There's some similarities in both, and there's some differences in both. In each of those programs, you choose a focused specialty of study. Now, that focused specialty of study can be in the APRN role, the Advanced Practice Registered Nurse role, such as a nurse practitioner. And we have several tracks in that program, including family nurse practitioner, psych mental health nurse practitioner, and adult gerontology acute care nurse practitioner. Or you can choose to focus your specialty area in such areas as nurse educator or nurse exec / nurse leader. Depending on what program you're in, whether it's BSN to DNP or MSN to DNP, and depending on your specialty focus, that will dictate the length of your program of study. So it's difficult sometimes to say, oh, you can be done in X amount of months. If you come in with your master's degree, for example, so you're doing a master's to DNP, most students are able to finish in 6 semesters, taking 2 classes or 6 credits each semester. Students in the BSN to DNP, depending on if they're going in an APRN track versus a nurse exec, nurse leader track, they may finish in anywhere between 9 and 12 semesters. Again, depending on how many courses each student takes per semester. Some students prefer to take 1 course at a time, and that's certainly doable, but that lengthens your program of study. Other students prefer to take 3 courses at a time, for example, so that may shorten your program of study. Again, students have the flexibility to be able to to modify their program of study to various lengths of time, depending on how many courses you want to take at a time. Most students do work full-time or part-time while they're in our program and find that to be very, very doable. And most students take 6 credits or 2 classes each semester. Again, with some flexibility and some variation related to that. Our program does allow students to take some electives as part of their DNP courses, so they can even subspecialize in such areas as clinical informatics, veterans health, healthcare leadership, etc. So those are some of the options that students have when they come to our program. Chad, is that a fair characterization? Do you want to add anything about that overall picture?
No, I think that's absolutely spot on. I think I don't know if you mentioned that students have 6 years to complete their program once they start it. I think also, as people are kind of thinking about their courses, mentioning that, I mean, we typically recommend, I think 18 to 24 hours of work per week is about what is typical for 2 classes at a time. Is that, I believe that's still correct. So as you're thinking about how you want to progress, and you don't have to make that decision now, just understanding that starting a program is a lot like adding a part-time job to your life already. So
Okay.
thanks.
So thank you. So let me talk about a couple things that we have multiple questions about typically, and see if I can answer some of your questions in advance. So you saw on our website what the admission criteria are to enter into the program. And we look at your GP, we do what we call a holistic admission. So we look not only at your GPA, at your program of study in your BSN and master's program. We look at your letters of recommendation. We look at your grades in select courses. For instance, research has told us that nurse practitioners do very well who have done well in the sciences. We look at your essay about why you want to go into this particular program and why you want to go in this particular specialty focus. So there's a number of things that we look at when we're determining admission. We also require all folks who are applying to our program to undergo a video conference interview with usually Chad and I and or another faculty to kind of talk and answer some of your questions, to talk about your projected plan of study, to talk about what your specialty area of focus will be, and to answer questions that you might have. In order to graduate, and we'll kind of look at the beginning and kind of look at the end, and then we'll look at the middle in between. In order to graduate, students complete their program of study. They complete a transformational healthcare change project, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And they complete 1,000 hours of clinical practice hours. Now, I'll talk more about those in just a second. We do not have a comprehensive examination at the end, nor do you do a thesis or dissertation at the end. You do a project. Now, in terms of a comprehensive exam, let me just mention that if your focus of study is the nurse practitioner specialty focus, we prepare you to sit for the national certification examination. And our students do very, very well on the nurse practitioner national certification exams. Our typical pass rate is in the high 90s, 94 to 96%, as it has been for the past, I don't know, 5 or 8 years. So we do very, very well with that program of study. Nurse leaders and nurse educators have the option to take the national certification examination. In most areas, that's not required. In some areas and some employers do require that. So that's something to consider as well. But you are well prepared to take those certification exams if you like. So let's talk for just a second about the DNP project and the clinical hours, because those subjects always come up. The DNP Transformational Change Project is a project that you are passionate about, that you feel can change healthcare in some way that would be positive and successful. This can be done in your place of employment, but not necessarily in your current role in your place of employment. Or this can be done in a community setting. It can be done in another community healthcare agency. There is a lot of flexibility related to that. There are many examples of DNP projects on the web, and I'd highly recommend that you look on the web for DNP projects to kind of give you some ideas. Some of the ideas that we have done, some of our students have done in the past, have been such things as developing a new program, such as a Coumadin clinic, or opening a new clinic as an entrepreneur. Some of our students have done such things as working on projects to prevent hospital readmissions for specialty patient populations, such as COPD patients or diabetes patients. Some of our students have looked at executive models, such as how do I change the healthcare delivery model to avoid no-show appointments in a local ambulatory care clinic. So there's a wide variety of areas in which you can focus your project. The project builds in each course. So even in the first course, we start talking about what are the ideas for your project. Is it something that we have a match with a faculty member who can help mentor you and help guide you through that project? For example, if you want to do medicine for the new Space Force, we don't have an expert in that area. We can certainly help guide you to find that person, but that might not be a project that we can help you with as much as some of the other projects. One of the things that's unique at Ohio University, and I'll just kind of give a little plug, is all the graduate faculty are very, very well prepared. We have both PhD and DNP faculty on our faculty. And many of the faculty work in clinical practice as well. So they have quite a bit of experience in terms of leadership, nurse practitioner world, research and scholarship, etc. So they're great helps for projects, and they can definitely help you find connections to do projects. Second thing that I kind of mentioned earlier that there's always a lot of questions is, what is this clinical practicum hours? The American Association of Colleges of Nursing requires anyone completing any DNP program must complete 1,000 clinical practice hours post-baccalaureate, post-BSN degree. Now, in the DNP program, that doesn't necessarily mean a hip-to-hip working with a preceptor doing direct patient care. If you're in the nurse exec world, this could be indirect patient care. So you're learning things that executives do, things like human resources, quality improvement, risk management, case management, things like that that an executive leader would need to know. If you're in the NP world, of course, you will be working hip to hip with a preceptor, doing direct patient care. So again, those clinical hours are going to vary depending on your specialty focus of study. Each course builds not each course, most courses build some clinical hours into those courses so that you're not doing 1,000 hours in that last semester, but rather there's 30 or 40 hours in the leadership course, there's 30 or 40 hours in the health policy course, etc. And then when you get to your big clinical courses towards the end of your program and study, that's where we add more clinical hours. One of the questions people always ask is, do we find a preceptor? And the answer is, of course, we're going to help you find a preceptor. Most students prefer to find a preceptor in their geographical area that works at a time, a place, and a schedule that's convenient to them. However, if you can't find that preceptor, then we'll work with you to find someone to work with on your project, who may or may not be in a local geographical area. So that's something that we work with you together on, to make things as convenient as we can for you to complete your clinical hours. Let's open the floor up for any questions. You'll need to unmute your microphone, and let's see if anyone has any questions that we can answer for you.
Hello. Hi. My name is Veronique Ramirez, and I am interested in the BSN and the DNP program, specifically for the mental health psych portion. I was curious because it looks like summer is the only time they accept if you're aware. I mean, I know I see there's like the deadline. Are you aware if there's any spots available, or if you? I guess what I'm wondering is, like, let's say you apply right now for the next year's track, for example. I think it's too early. Is there ever an opportunity where you can like apply and then, like, let's say someone dropped out or someone wasn't interested and a spot opened up, or how does that work?
Hi, this is Chad, the academic advisor. The MSN Psych Mental Health Program does admit once per year in the summer. For the DNP, students would start in a particular semester. They just would essentially fall in with some of those psych track specific courses when they're offered. So when was it that you were thinking about or hoping to start your program?
Hopefully as soon as possible. So I guess I was just trying to kind of like narrow down to like 2 schools to apply, because I know the programs are kind of competitive, and that's kind of where I was trying to see, because I was originally looking like the MSN versus like DNP. Now I've decided more DNP, so I didn't really quite understand like what's the soonest, or I guess that's the kind of route I was wondering. And then if you're not able to get in, I know some schools allow you to take some of the core courses ahead of time, and that's another question I was wondering. So I know you can usually only transfer so many in, like specifically from the school, not from like another school. So those are like the 2 questions I was wondering. I'd like to start as soon as possible, but I just didn't know when are you able to start, pretty much.
Do you want that, Dr. Vaught?
Sure. So the DNP program admits once a year in the fall. So you would, if you're coming into the BSN to DNP, you would start in fall. That first year you would be taking mostly core courses, the first and second year, and then that third year you would enter into your clinical courses as the psych mental health NP. That being said, that's what we recommend. Now, occasionally students want to take a course in the summer just to get that, jump start onto things. That won't necessarily shorten your time, your program of study, because courses are pretty much taken in sequence to some extent. There's a little flexibility, but
okay.
That project builds from course to course, so you have to take those courses in sequence. If you do take the course in the summer, that would probably be coming in as a non-degree student, so you may not be eligible for versus if you waited till fall. So that would be my only thing to think about is, now if your employer is paying tuition reimbursement and you're not using financial aid, that would be something that Chad can certainly talk to you about, what would be the best courses to start in. But the cohort will start in fall.
Okay, and I guess, so does it, for the DNP, is it like different from the MSN in terms of like they're still accepting more students, or is it full, or is it so many students per track, or because you're starting with the core classes, it's just so many DNP students
We
of
don't
whatever
really,
track.
it's not like we only have like 15 spots and we do like a Hunger Games type of, you know, event for the top 15. Um, we can accept, I mean, we try to keep our cohorts between 30 and 50 that start, you know, in a given semester. But if all of a sudden 140 really amazing psych students show up, we can, you know, we'll hopefully be able to figure that out. So if the thing I think I would urge you to think about, and I think Dr. Vaught will agree with me, is essentially what's the ultimate goal? Is the ultimate goal like, I want to get out, I want to get practicing as soon as possible? Well, then that's one path. If it's, I am okay staying in school because I want to set myself up for longevity in my career in a particular position in my career, that's another path. But I mean, would you agree with that, Dr. Vaught?
I would. You bring up a really good point, and that is, do I do my MSN and get my psych mental health, or do I do my DNP and get my psych mental health? And at this point, I'm going to have to pull up my crystal ball and tell you what I see is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So a few years ago, the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, our accrediting organization, basically said by the year 2015, everybody to go into a nurse practitioner program should have a DNP. All right, well, we missed that deadline. Now they're saying by 2025, everyone should have a DNP as entry to practice. So a number of people are saying, well, if by 2025, when I'm graduated and I'm working, am I going to be competing as a psych NP for people who have DNPs versus me who has an MSN? And the answer is yes. Now, is there a difference in salary, responsibility? The DNP prepares you for a more global view. And in some parts of the country, the DNP is getting paid more than the MSN Psych NP, for example. Not much, but a little bit. But the DNP Psych NP also tends to have more responsibility and more global responsibility. So they may be in charge of like a psych clinic, or they may be the ones that say, hey, develop a telehealth program for our psych mental health patients. So like Chad said, it's a difference in where you want to be. What I would say is if you ever think you might want a DNP, do it now. And this is why. You can do the MSN Psych Mental Health NP right now and be done in 8 semesters, 6 semesters. You know, you can be done in a fairly short period of time. And then think maybe I'm going to come back and get my DNP later. The problem is you may have to repeat some of those courses. So it actually will take you longer and may be more expensive to do it sequentially versus doing the two programs concurrently. Because when you do them concurrently, some of those courses double count as both the MSN as well as the DNP courses. So that's why I would tell you to think about that decision a little bit. And think about what you want to do, not necessarily just in 5 years, but in 10 years. A lot of DNPs go into teaching. They're the entrepreneurs as it is. So it's something to kind of consider is, what do I want to do eventually and where are my goals? So there's a little bit of thought process that you should think about. And again, we do have students to start in the MSN program and say, you know, now that I've taken a couple courses and dipped my toe into graduate work, I really want to come do the DNP. And we can transfer you from one program to the other. We are very committed to student success, and we're very committed to being flexible. And so we try to work with you to help that process of your success happen. Did that answer your question? That was a long one.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been researching and speaking with my mentors to see, and long term, I plan on going for DNP. So I figured that this is, I agree, kind of it's going to be a thing like how RN became like they're pushing everyone to go back for BSN. Like, I feel like it's one of those things that if you're going to go for it, you should probably just go ahead and go for it. So thank you. No, that was very helpful. So I guess there are spots, or what's the deadline? I could not find it on the website. I'm so sorry.
For the MSN, the deadline for the summer psych mental health is March 30th, so 6 days. For the DNP, I believe our current deadline is, I'm drawing a blank. It's June 30th, I believe, but let me just double check.
And again, because everything is in a state of flux with people in and out of the university right now, we have extended some of those deadlines. And I would not be surprised if the university does extend some of the application deadlines. Chad's checking on that fall deadline right now, and he'll get back to us. Meanwhile, does anybody else have any other questions that I can answer? Sophia, did you have any questions? I know we've chatted before.
Yes, hi, Dr. Vaught. Nice to see you again. I did have a question regarding the on-campus clinical. I know that we had kind of talked a little bit about that, that's going to be happening probably every semester for the duration of the program, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, and thank you, Sophia, for bringing that up. May I talk about that for just 1 second?
Sure, please.
We also have a little bit of uniqueness in our program in that we have something called on-campus intensives or immersions. And basically students come to campus for 2 or 3 days, and they're immersed into a course with their peers, with the faculty, with our mentors. We have them attend conferences. We bring in expert guest speakers in areas in which you're interested in. And we do that to help build the cohort, to help provide networking, and to help you really get that relationship built with the faculty. That happens in the first semester, like a pre-semester, like for orientation. It happens the semester that you do your project proposal, which is typically the 3rd semester. And then we have you do it again when you present your final project to your faculty and peers. And that's typically the 6th semester. So that's only 3 times that you come to campus. That being said, for those people in the NP program, there are other times that they may come to campus, such as skills checkoff day. We do have a day that we bring students to campus to kind of make sure you're ready for clinical, as well as kind of a final checkoff day where we say, yes, you're ready to launch, go off, be healthy and happy. So it varies a little bit depending on your specialty focus, the number of on-campus intensives. We have talked, Sophie, because I know you're out of state, we have talked about doing some of those using distance technology like what we're doing today. We haven't got to the nitty gritty, like this day we're going to do distance technology, this day we really want to see people face to face, but that is in the works. So those 3 to 5 campus intensives now may end up decreasing somewhat. When you do come to campus, we put you up in a hotel, we feed you, we get you where you need to go, help you spend time with each other. So we find that to be a very important time together. Did that answer your question, Sophia?
Yes, thank you. And do you know, I know the first semester, there's the logistical things with everything that's happening right now with the pandemic and everything, but do you happen to know, so that we could anticipate an approximate date on when that on-campus clinical is going to happen in the first semester?
I tell you what, I will get back to you on that. We have a tentative date. It's just a matter, which would be in August, the week of the 17th, because classes start the 24th. But I don't want to put that in stone yet because the faculty have to make that final yep, this is the date we want everybody to come.
Sure,
Um,
sure. I was
and-
just wondering so that we can anticipate our employers and let them know ahead of time that this is happening, and tickets and logistics of all of that.
And so we try to get those out at least 3 or 4 months in advance. The other thing is we try to make at least one of those days a weekend, because some of our students work Monday through Friday, and that way they're like free on a Saturday or Sunday. It doesn't always work, but we try to make that work out at least some of the times for students, particularly those who don't necessarily work weekends or can change their weekend options.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Other questions? Chad, what have we forgotten?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Denise.
When you were talking about how many classes students normally take in a semester, and you said around 2 or 3, it just depends on how quickly or slowly they'd like to complete their program of study. Is there a maximum amount of credit hours they can take in a semester that you will allow?
The school allows students to take undergraduate essentially up to 18. Graduate, you can take up to 18, but that would be somebody who's not working. And that would probably be like a 40 to 60 hour a week job in terms, would you agree with that, Dr. Vaught, in terms of the commitment, in terms of studying and the type of work that's involved?
I would agree. We did have a student take 4 classes a couple years ago because at that point she wasn't working and didn't have family or other responsibilities that she was concerned with. And it was a heavy load. She admitted it was a heavy load, but she was successful.
She was, okay.
Was successful. But we've also had students say, you know, right now I'm just started a new job. I just had a new baby. I just started Girl Scouts. I mean, whatever. And say I can only do 1 class at a time, and that's okay too.
And do you recommend them to start in the lower end of taking credit hours so they can get acclimated to what to expect? Did this individual start off right away with 4 classes?
No, she
Okay.
started off with 2 classes, and
Okay.
that's what I would recommend is most people start 2 classes. Actually, several of the students that did 1 class at a time said, oh, I really regret I didn't do 2 at a time.
Okay. Yeah, because I like to err on the conservative side when speaking to the program.
Right.
Okay, and then the video conference interview, when you talked about the holistic overview of admissions, where in the process is the video conference interview done? Is that done immediately, or is that done at what stage do the students do this?
So we try to cluster those so
Okay.
that we do those a couple times a month. And once everybody's application is complete, then they go on the list for that video conferencing. And is that the best way to describe it, Chad? And then
I think what you're asking is like, you know, how many hurdles are after that? Once your application is complete, that's when it goes to a faculty review. The faculty will review the applications and then choose a subset of those who applied, who they would like to interview. And of those who interview, there's a subset of those who are asked to interview who are offered admission. And so by and large, that video interview is, I mean, probably like the last hurdle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. You know, I'm based in Phoenix, but I do Arizona and California. So obviously Arizona is an approved DNP, but California, so I haven't had any students yet do the DNP, but I just want to make sure I properly communicate this interview with the students. So
And I think you bring up an interesting point, Denise. Ohio is a SAR state, which means,
Yep.
you know, many of our many of our states are SAR states, and they have a reciprocal agreement.
Uh-huh.
Every state does. And so there are some states that limit out-of-state students from taking classes to an out-of-state university. You know, and so that's something I always recommend, is to check with your board of nursing to make sure there's no limits that we haven't found. And those boards of nursing change those rules frequently. And so we're frequently looking at those rules, but we also say it's also important that as an out-of-state student that you look at those rules as well.
Right, right.
We don't want to have any glitches in the system.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay. I think that was my couple questions. Thank you.
Okay. Chad, do you have anything you'd like to add?
If you have questions, please send an email to dnp@ohio.edu, and we'll do our best to answer your questions, get you more information, and do what we can to help you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope we answered your questions. Please, as Chad said, don't hesitate to contact us. And everybody have a nice evening. You know, wash your hands, and everybody stay healthy and safe.